I wanted to talk about one of the narcissist's biggest fears, which is that they fear that they might collapse within themselves. And what I mean by that is narcissists in their minds, they must they must believe that they are somehow heads above everyone else in terms of uniqueness, being different, being special. They narcissists, whether they're covert or overt or malignant narcissists, there's a common thread amongst the many different varieties of narcissists, which is that they they hold on to this idea of grandeur, and they do think and they do believe that they are somehow special and better than everyone else. But because people so often don't reflect that back to them, they they consider themselves being misunderstood by many people. People just don't get them. Most people aren't smart enough to understand how special the narcissist is. So narcissists come up with all these narratives that justify why people don't even reflect back to them that which they really are, which is this grand persona. So narcissists, they really hold on tight to this idea and this notion that they're special, that they're special in a good way, that they have unique abilities, unique traits, unique personalities. The thing is, narcissists, they do feel different. They are kind of different. They don't really fit in, but they attribute that difference to being something positive. They must attribute that difference to being something positive and something good. Otherwise, they might fall into the inevitable outcome, which is realizing that they're insufficient in many ways, and that's just too much for a narcissist to bear. They really struggle to see their own shortcomings. So you know, instead of accepting that maybe there are lots of shortcomings that should be worked on, and they feel different from many people because they don't really fit in, etc., etc. They associate that feeling of being different as being better, not insufficient, and then they tell themselves all kinds of stories in their minds about how them being different means they're they're different in a unique, special way. But because people don't reflect back to them the way they really want to view themselves, narcissists are always on the verge of collapsing, in a sense that people, instead of people reflecting back to the narcissist what they want to believe about themselves, the people are reflecting back to them kind of who they really are. And they don't like that. So narcissists are always suffering injuries here and there because people who just treat them normally, even if somebody were to treat a narcissist as a normal person as they would anybody else, oftentimes a narcissist would be offended for being treated as a normal person. A lot less being treated badly. Sometimes just being treated as a normal person for them is not good enough, that they think they deserve special treatment. So it's things like that, just the way people interact with them, that kind of remind them, suggest them that maybe they are just normal, and maybe they are lacking in many areas. But narcissists, because they can't self-reflect and they can't improve, they don't know how to accept that. It's really difficult for them to accept that they have to improve in any areas, because if they did accept that, then because they struggle to self-improve, they would be stuck in the cycle of insufficiency and this kind of chronic state of insufficiency because they really struggle to self-reflect and improve. So as a protective measure, within themselves, not to fall into that kind of trap, they hold on to this idea of grandeur, and that if people are unable to reflect back to them how special they actually are, then that basically means that people don't understand them, that people are not intelligent enough to see how special the narcissist is. And that's why narcissists, they try so hard to find those special sources of supply, those special targets, who actually do buy into the false narrative that the narcissist tells themselves, which is that they're great and grand. Those supply sources who can reflect back to them the things that they really want to believe in themselves are considered very good supply. But those supply, they're really hard to come across. And even when they do come across them, they don't tend to last very long for one reason or another. maybe the people start to see through the narcissist, or maybe simply the narcissist reach the point where they find the supply boring. So, even if the supply reflects back to them the things they want to believe, then it just doesn't, it just loses the potency. So, it's not really good anymore. But yeah, because the narcissists are in this kind of mindset, they're always repeating this narrative that they're heads above everybody else. They're great. They're most likely misunderstood by most people, but that's just because people aren't very smart. But they're great. They're special because life, reality, and people are always kind of suggesting to them just by existing that actually maybe the narcissist isn't so special. Maybe they're normal at best. Maybe they're just nothing, nothing remarkable. When the narcissist kind of gets that kind of feeling that that's what's being suggested by the world and by the people of it, they suffer pretty painful injuries. And if they get enough of that, they can't balance it by, convincing themselves that they are great, then they're at risk of collapsing with themselves in a sense that this idea, this notion of grandeur that they want to hold on to, it's always at risk of falling apart. And if it falls apart, the narcissist suffers a collapse, and then they struggle to really kind of exist in their own skin because they must be special. They can't be ordinary, and certainly they can't be insufficient. So they try really hard to hold on to that um, that notion that they're great, but in reality, they're always on the verge of collapse. And even in some of the cases where narcissists are very young, let's say they're really beautiful, attractive, then maybe there's a lot of supply to kind of keep them on their high pedestal. But that doesn't last. And most narcissists aren't stunningly attractive to kind of have that. Most narcissists, whether they're young, middle-aged, or old, they're always at risk of a collapse. And even for those few that are stunningly attractive, and it's easier for them to maintain that because people reflect back to them how great they are because they're attractive and things like that. Even for those, it's only a matter of time before they realize that people aren't going to reflect that back to them, and then they start questioning their own greatness, and along comes the risk of a collapse. So yeah, there's not much stability in that aura of greatness that they want to maintain. It's not very stable. It's not really well supported. It doesn't take much for it to fall apart, and it really is a matter of time before it falls apart.